a lesbian and a loudmouth Jew. With a gasket always ready to blow, you're listening to Judy's show. Who? Judy show. Wait a minute, who are you talking about? Oh, she's an asshole. What is wrong with you? Oh, you suck. So long. Fuck off. Hey everyone, welcome to It's Judy Show with Judy Gold. I am your host, Judy Gold, and oh boy, welcome to Project 2025. Happy New Year. Although, as many of you know, I just think of it as a calendar change because I think of Rosh Hashanah as the New Year because I feel like it really is the New Year. It's in autumn most of the time, and it is a new beginning. I mean, school starts, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's what I think. This week, we have part one of my interview with Mimi Zieman, who wrote a book called Tap Dancing on Everest, and it is the story of her journey. She literally tap danced on Mount Everest, but I know her personally because her amazing husband I grew up with in New Jersey, Jeffrey Allen, who is a doctor. Mimi is a doctor, a OBGYN who is very involved in abortion rights, the right to choose, and is a hero. She wrote a play about it that I did a reading of, it's called the Row Monologues, and she's amazing. So I hope you enjoy this first podcast of the new year because I think it's important that we highlight really important issues because, as you know, in just a couple of weeks, the world is coming to an end. And to all the Jews out there, I love you. I love everyone who supports Israel's right to exist, Israel's right to defend itself. And I am a very proud Jew. But if you think Trump is good for the Jews, God bless you. And that was your only issue, which is the most important issue as I speak. You know, my son Ben was asking me what about my identity and what the being a woman, being a lesbian, being a Jew, which would be the most important or number one part of my identity. He asked me in a roundabout way. I'm a Jew. That's it. You know, I am a Jew. I am linked through generations and generations. Family members have died. I don't know why I hit the fucking bell on died, but whatever. For my right to light Hanukkah candles and put it in my window and feel safe. And there's so many ways to be a good Jew. And that's what I cherish, that my values are very Jewish. My identity is very Jewish, and that is who I am, how I think, how I look, how I sound. And I will fight for our right to exist and defend our homeland. Okay, so that's that. I don't know. That was before we play part one of Mimi. Okay, I just want to say they've been doing work on my street all morning, and I am late sending in my intro because of this fucking, what are they called? The things that go all day, all morning. I can't take it. I've closed the windows. I've closed doors of other rooms where it's even louder. So hopefully it won't annoy you. But I want to say rest in peace, Jimmy Carter. You know, a lot of people have a lot to say about his presidency. I remember it well because he was president all 4 years of my high school, of when I was in high school. And I do remember I remember the gas lines. I remember gas lines meaning that we had to wait in line according to our license plate, whether we could get gas or not because there was such a gas shortage. But I also remember, the Camp David. I remember, you know what I really remember is my mother, okay, loved the fact that Rosalind Carter, first of all, that they walked after their inauguration back to the White House, and that she wore a dress that she had worn before. My mother loved that how humble they were and just how they were honest and real people. And so whatever you think of his presidency, which is now all in hindsight, I remember thinking of him as a really good human being and with really good values. And that's gone. That is gone. He really, he is the definition, or was the definition, of a public servant, of someone who served the public. And he had really good taste in music too. He had, that was one of the good things I remember about him. But yeah, it's gone. That is gone. So that's that. I watched the Golden Globes. I thought Nikki did an amazing job. I thought she was great. That is such a hard gig. They're just always up and walking around and drinking and annoying and think they're great. It's just amazing to watch these award shows. I know a lot of my friends don't watch them, but it's so fake, and I love that. I love looking at these people in their, environment, just knowing that you're hot one minute, you're a piece of shit the next. And, honestly, the speeches about, if we could just think like Elphaba and all those sort of uplifting, innocent speeches of we're going to be okay, they don't resonate with me right now, because I feel like all the work and all the fighting and fighting, when I mean fighting for equal rights and fighting for, dignity, and it sometimes feels like it's all for naught. But you got to move past it, and you got to hope, and I don't know. That's what I think. But I thought Nikki did an amazing job. I wish Adrian Brody would have said the word Holocaust, but he didn't. He sort of, he didn't mention Jewish or Holocaust, which I think is important. 3 of his grandparents are Jewish. He is Jewish, but he doesn't really, look at his face. He's a Hungarian Jew, like me, and mention it. It's important to mention. And I read somewhere, and then I went and rewatched it, that Gal Gadot said Mazel Tov to him. Gal Gadot, I love her. She's fucking hot, and she is Jewish and gorgeous and a Zionist and just a fucking hot fuck. Oh, I love her. So that's that. What else did I want? I took Elisa away for her birthday, and we went to, and I didn't tell her where we were going, and we went to Woodstock. The Woodstock Weigh-In, which is incredible. They did an amazing job, and we were right on the stream, and all we wanted to do was read and watch, movies and TV shows. We watched the entire Somebody Somewhere, which was fucking fantastic. I don't know why I just hit that, because it's the most non-Jewish show in the entire world. But here's the thing I wanted to tell you, and then we're going to talk to Mimi. But the one thing we did, we got there, and it was beautiful, and it's exactly what we needed. We just wanted to get away. And they had record player, turntable. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw that. And you also saw that the way the video posted was ridiculous, because it was only in a little, and I blame Haley Dircher for that. But that's a whole other situation. She knows I'm kidding. Anyway, so they had a turntable, They had a dispensary, and I got a little stoned, and I listened to albums. Like literally, we put the album on the turntable, and I sat there listening like I used to do when I was a little girl, where you did nothing but really listen, and you looked at the album cover, and it was so healing to sit there and listen to these, Chuck Mangione and Simon and Garfunkel and, Stevie Wonder. It was just on a turntable. I'm taking my albums out of my storage unit. I'm getting a turntable. I miss doing that. And it brought me back to simpler times, and times where, our kids don't have that experience of literally just, what's the word I'm looking for? You're all encompassed into this one. You don't look at your phone. You just sit there and listen to music without any distractions. It was, oh God, it was so healing. Try it. Try it one day when you have like 2 hours, like on a weekend or whatever. So thank you to the Woodstock Way, and it was fucking amazing. And the food there was great, and Elisa was surprised. Okay, that's for Elisa. But anyway, we got a lot to talk about. I have a rant in 2 weeks right after the inauguration, but I just want to say, yeah, just let's do it. Let's do 2025, and let's do it really well, because we got our work cut out for us. You know what I'm saying, baby? All right. So sit back right now. I know you're going to love this. Sit back, relax, and enjoy part 1 of my conversation with Mimi Zieman. Hey, everyone. Welcome to It's Judy Show with Judy Gold. I'm your host, Judy Gold. Today, I'm so excited about today because, all right, I have to say that I know this woman personally, which we'll discuss. But I also know her professionally. I also have been to her home for dinner. I find her to be one of the most well-rounded, inspiring, whatever, altruistic. You know what? That is an SAT word, altruistic. Just an incredible person who I've wanted on the podcast. And now after the election, I wanted to wait till after the election for various reasons that you'll understand. She's an author. She's a playwright. She's a dancer. And she is a doctor. A doctor. Okay? She's like my Jewish mother's dream daughter, okay, that she didn't get. I read this book, Tap Dancing on Everest, A Young Doctor's Unlikely Adventure. You have to get Mimi Zieman's, or Mimi. People call you Mimi. And I always say Mimo. And that's right. It's Mimi, right?
Mimi. Yeah, I know. It really trips people up.
Whatever.
So it doesn't bother me.
Mimi Zieman, get this book. It's an audio book. I read it on my Kindle. Because I travel and I didn't want to bring the book. It's so inspiring. I think also, it's a coming of age book, but it's so much more than that. And I really think something young women or women, I think all women should read it. And I think men should read it too. But I think it's very empowering. And I can't wait to talk to Mimi about this and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, and they, thems, Mimi Zieman is here. Woo! Mimi, listen, I am on your block. Well, a block away from where you grew up here on the Upper West Side of New York City. And first of all, do you miss the city at all? You live in Georgia now with your husband. Oh, wait. we need to get that out of the way. Mimi is married to Jeffrey, who I grew up with. And we went to synagogue together, and everyone was mean to me, except for Jeffrey Allen, Joe Purdy, and a couple of other people. But they were a year older than me. But they were like extremely nice to me. Mimi's husband's also a doctor. They're very unsuccessful, and he's also an artist. So there's no talent in this fucking family. Anyway, so Mimi, you grew up on the Upper West Side. And, you know, I always thought, until I read your book, that you were from some fancy Upper West Side family.
You're kidding me.
No.
That is so funny.
Because you're very Hamisha. This is the Jew bell, by the way, that anything remotely Jewish, I ring the bell. But you're so, what? What were you going to say?
No, highlight of my life that you just rang the Jew bell for me. Like being on this podcast and getting the bell. So you're
the bell.
So excited right now. Yeah.
I thought, she's an OBGYN. She's, you know, a dancer, you know, she must have come from this, you know, very upper middle class, you know, you're the daughter of immigrants.
Who came off the boat, like the refugees off the boat.
Right.
Yes.
Your father was a Holocaust survivor. You're a 2G.
Yep.
The one thing I related a lot to your family dynamics as far as having a critical mother. Wait, I have to ring the bell for all these people. But your relationship with your grandmother really made me think of my relationship with my grandmother, because she was the one who showered me with love, unconditional love, and also she would come every weekend to visit, and I shared a room with her.
Oh my God, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. And she was born in 1896. When was your grandmother born?
I think 1914.
So she was 10 when women got the right to vote. 10 years old? Oh, no, she was 6 when women got the right to vote in 1920. And my grandmother was 24. And here we are.
And here we are honoring them by being strong women, strong Jewish women.
Initially, I've listened to some interviews. You wanted to write this book. You didn't want it to be, hadn't anticipated you would talk about your childhood. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So when I finally started writing this book, which is framed around this experience I had being the doctor for an Everest expedition when I was a 25-year-old medical student, was something I always wanted to write. So when I started writing, I thought, this is the book I'm writing. Then all this stuff about my family came out of me, which I never expected to write. You know, and then it became interesting to ask more, how and why did this daughter of immigrants raised in the city, as you say, from a pretty scrappy background, but also within an Orthodox community, end up on Everest at 25? You know, the only woman on the team taking care of these mountaineers. And so that's how it became more of a story of that, you know, answering that question and how we find our way, what drives us, what's important to us, and how, you know, our family influences us. But, you know, many of us still want to separate and find a path so different.
You know, it's interesting because my podcast, you know, when I started it, it was called Kill Me Now. And it was all about, when I first, this is 2015, it was all about things that pissed people off, because I was always pissed off. But I started doing, you know, I love doing research and finding out why people are the way they are. And I have delved into so many people's childhoods, and people on this podcast have been like, how did you know that? Oh my God, you know, because that is what makes you who you are. This finite amount of time surrounded by these people, and how that really makes you who you are. I mean, Margaret Smith, brilliant comedian who has retired from comedy, but she had this bit about, you spend 18 years at home with your family and the rest of your life working it out. Um, and this book says so much about that. I really want to talk about your childhood. So the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, your grandma, you were a sort of a sickly child, or you
A
had
lot
these
of head colds, allergies, chubby child.
right,
Um,
which that freaked me out too. I was like, what? When you were 2, your grandmother signed you up for a dance class at the 92nd Street Y.
Yep.
And you at some point discovered that your family, there were other people in your family who danced. But do you remember that?
I don't remember the 2-year-old class, but I remember some early classes. I remember Martha Graham at 6 very
Yes.
well. And then I didn't dance for a while, except for actually after school Israeli folk dance. And then it wasn't until I saw a chorus line in 9th grade
Oh,
that I was like, I have to do that. I want to be one of
right.
those people.
I can do
And
that.
I can do that. And I took the subway that you take now because,
Ugh.
yeah, I grew up across the street from where you are now. And it was so
Right.
fun when I ran into you at the diner one
Oh,
time
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and went down to 50th Street where all the Broadway dancers were training and spent years there. But, couldn't. You went into comedy, which was such a hard decision. I wanted to be a dancer, but I didn't have those guts to do that.
Well,
And of
it's
course,
not.
had no family encouragement to do that because of the
Because my
family I
family
came.
was really encouraging Mimi.
I know, but you did it. But you did it.
Right. Against, yeah. It's so funny that you say that because, after you wrote this book, and we're going to get to this later on, and then you wrote an incredible, incredible play. I heard you speak about the industry and how shocking it was to be treated like a non-person, that you don't exist, that you have to, because you worked in the medical field, people got back to you immediately. There was,
Yes.
and that you were shocked that people just ghosted you
Yeah. In
or,
the publishing industry. Yes.
huh?
In the publishing industry. Yeah.
Yes. Which is, I
Complete.
think, is all the, arts and TV. It's just like, it is really, that really made me think, wow, here's someone who, works at saving people's lives. And then you write a book and this fucking bitch can't get back to you?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you're so fucking important?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
That's how the industry is. And even today, I was so thrilled. I made it on this list, Independent Book Review, best books of 2024, but I can't get one mainstream media review. So that this outlet like specializes in smaller books, independent books, and they thought it was, one of the best books, but no, mainstream media won't even read my book.
oh, fuck mainstream media. Um, yeah, that's that. So it's a good thing you didn't go into the dance. You grew up a city kid, which was, my mother grew up a city kid on the Upper West Side and always said, it would have been so much easier to bring you kids up. Well, especially me in New York City. She had to move to New Jersey because of my father's job. But your life is, I just imagine myself 27 miles away from you at the same exact time, wishing I was you. You excel at you're smart, you're a good student. Your relationship with your mother, can you talk about that and how you developed an eating disorder. And I don't you think it's from that?
Well, I mean, the whole culture was, there was no body positivity back then. So I came from a family of overweight people. I was chubby. Yeah, mom took me to Weight Watchers when I was 9.
Oh, my mother did that. Yeah.
You and, and then it didn't help being in the dance world,
Right,
right?
of
You were
course.
supposed to be so there was and almost honestly, almost every girl I knew had an eating disorder back then. So
But they didn't really talk about it. It wasn't
no.
like, yeah, like now where you can go to the doctor and have a discussion about it. So, can you talk about how you figured it out?
Yeah, I mean, it was I was, you know, quite underweight, and, my parents recognized it. I did go to therapy, but never talked about my eating in therapy, but, had so many other things to work out.
Right.
And, it was pretty much during the college years. By the time I was done with college, I sort of didn't have that, I was normal weight.
Right. And you weren't living with your parents. Your parents divorced,
My
which
parents divorced when I was very young,
yeah,
around 7. At
right.
least my dad moved out.
That wasn't the norm.
No, that wasn't the norm back then either. So there were a lot of reasons to feel sort of on my own, you know, which I think influences me to just find my own path, my own way. Anyway, city kids back then, we were sort of left to our own devices. And so we would roam the city and we're exposed to a lot in a good way.
Right.
And, a lot of crime back then too.
Yeah.
91st Street and Broadway had prostitutes hanging out on it,
Oh,
which is,
yeah.
so different than it is now.
It's so funny. I talk to kids my age who grew up here, and we're like, oh, we'd go to Central Park. I'd get robbed every single day. Like it was just crime ridden. But and I know with my kids, they grew up faster. They're not afraid of anything. They can travel anywhere and sort of figure it out.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started riding the subway by yourself?
Around, yeah, middle school.
Yeah. I mean, people are like, when you go outside of this area and people are like, oh my God, they think that, you walk down the street and people are just shooting at you. And how do you let your kids do that? And it really makes them, aware, that nothing throws them. They've seen every kind of person. They've heard every language. Every socioeconomic situation. Okay. So you sort of have this fraud. Can you talk about, because I think it's really important considering what's going on in this world, the impact of being a 2G, a second generation of the Holocaust. And now that there's so many Holocaust survivors dying, there's very few of them left, and we have a shitload of Holocaust deniers and this fucking anti-Semitism that's going on. Does this sort of situation in the country and the way this is brewing, and it scares me, or I don't know if you're scared, but I am personally scared. I thought never again was never again. Can you talk about it from the perspective of a 2G?
I just think everyone needs to be aware and use their voice. It's so tempting to want to hide being Jewish right now. That's why what you're doing is so amazing. Because people are quick to want to cancel you or find, just decide that you're a terrible person or a genocidal person, right? And and that's one thing I learned from my father. So my father was a survivor, but also the only one in his family. His parents and siblings were all murdered, and he wanted to use his life to fight for civil rights, to advocate for peace, and he never missed an opportunity to speak out against any wrongs. And I think it's sort of all of our responsibility, Jews and non-Jews alike, to do that. Now it's hard. Like we're all burnt out too, and we're jaded, and all the election and the politics. But um, I just think we have to persist.
Yeah, I think it's really important to speak out, and I think the thing that bothers me the most, I remember right after October 7th, I posted, it was within a week, about a week later, I posted, I now know who would hide me. And it wasn't a joke. It was not a joke.
Yeah.
And I grew up surrounded, like any one of my parents' friends who had an Eastern European accent was a Holocaust survivor, and some with an English accent, or, when you were a kid, you did not grow up wealthy. You went in the summertime, to the Catskills, and it was not the fancy hotels. You called it the country, but all of the families there were families of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, and the more I got to think about it, writing, it was confusing. On the one hand, these, especially when they went to the country, they were laughing and playing cards. They all had different accents. It was a place, they could be themselves. We sort of knew their past, really didn't know anything. Nobody really talked about it.
Right.
And yet, eh, weird things would come out of their mouths sometimes. And yet, here we were, Americans, eating cereal, watching cartoons. Everything was fine. It was not a far away past. This was my father. This was my mother. This was their friends. And, I think, a lot of kids of immigrants feel that way, right? Not, connected to the old country, but not really, but
Is there a
living
lot of
it through their parents.
Yeah, there's a lot of is there a lot of guilt that goes with that? Like, I'm American and you're stuck. Like, is there that
Yeah,
going
there's a
on?
lot of tension because, they dress me in weird clothes
Right.
sometimes. We ate weird foods, Why can't you be like my friends'
Right.
American parents? I don't think anyone ever, not once in my entire life, checked on my homework or helped me with homework.
No way.
No. And, and it was that sort of experience of the opposite of hovering, you know, which was kind of good in a way, right? It made me so super independent. It made
Right.
me think I had to do everything on my own. Later, I had to unlearn, that's not actually the healthiest way to be. You have to
Right.
ask other people for help sometimes.
But also, you would think there would be hovering because of, where are you? My mother was a wreck all the time.
Yes. So a
Yeah.
lot of people reacted like that. Right.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to talk about your first gynecological exam. You became a gynecologist, an OBGYN, which you didn't know at all at this time. But your mother took you, I think you were 16, is that right?
Yes.
Which is pretty ahead of her time,
Yes.
to the gyno, and mentioned that you might need birth control.
Yeah,
I
my
mean,
mother suggested I might wanna get on birth control. My mother was very critical. My mother was a tough woman. She was hard-edged, but she was also progressive and open-minded and
right,
funny. And yeah, she took me and said, "Yeah, you might wanna get on birth control." I was not in a relationship.
right.
I was not near to having sex.
Yeah,
Um,
this is the 70s and you're 16 years old and no one talked about that. I mean, we had after school specials, that was it.
yes. Yes. But then I'd go, and I was kind of so excited because it was a woman gynecologist, which weren't so common back then either. The experience was not good. She kind of brushed me off. She was dismissive. She was a foreign doctor actually, and she was a tough kind of person. I remember her cold fingers as a
Ugh,
metaphor for her cold personality.
right.
And I left there just thinking, hmm, maybe I could do that, but be a little
Really?
nicer
Yeah.
and warmer and friendlier and treat a teen with a little bit more patience and respect. So,
you end up going to college and you study medicine. I mean,
Biology.
yeah, biology. First of all, I fucking hated biology. I have no brain capacity for this. I'm like a whole other side of the brain. And
Yeah,
you're like,
yours is filled with brilliant comedy.
oh, please. You decide you're going to go to medical school. You end up going to Colorado and getting this. You love nature. I mean, which is so not a city kid, but you end up falling in love with nature and the mountains in Colorado. And what is it about you that you don't just say, God, I love nature. I think I'll go visit the mountains and then I'll go that you I mean, we're going to get to the book and this adventure, but that you don't just say, "Okay, I'll go visit the mountains every now and then." What the fuck is in your personality that it's like you love the mountains and you end up climbing Mount Everest?
Yeah, I think when I feel something in my gut that makes me feel happier, basically. Like when I danced, I was happy,
Right.
and when I was in the mountains, I was happy. So to
Right.
me, it was like, how can I get more of that?
Right.
So after discovering the mountains in Colorado, I just happened to see a slideshow there on acid rain in Tibet because I was at a high altitude field biology research station.
Oh God, I've been to so many of those. God.
So I decided I got to go to the Himalayas. That made sense to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that year I came back to Manhattan, applied to med schools, waitress to save some money to get to Nepal. And I went there and backpacked alone for a couple months.
I mean that to me, you're backpacking alone. Let's remind people, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. I mean, there's no landline, there's no phone booths. You're alone. How long was this? Couple months?
It was a couple months.
Yeah.
I went to Nepal, then Burma and Thailand. So I
Okay.
was
And you're
gone for
by
about.
yourself. I mean, these stories, of you staying in these places. I mean, were you not like, oh my God, what am I doing? Did you not get bored with yourself? Like, I need human contact.
Well,
How
that's
did
what's
you
fun about
survive?
traveling alone because you meet people,
Right.
right? And
I mean,
then
I know that from being on the road. But I know what to do when I have my routine. Like I'm gonna, I'll look up anyone, that I'm remotely connected to. This is before phones and and all. I would go to synagogue. I would do things. I would learn the city, but I knew it was a finite, I'm here for 5 days. I'm here for 7 days. But you're in a foreign fucking land by yourself without any comforts of home.
well, that's partly why I wrote the book because of course I had fears and of course I was afraid and of course I would get lonely, which is why there's so much material for the book because I wrote in my journals all the
I
time.
know. Yeah.
I recorded everything because what else was I going to do? I did have a lot of downtime, but I feel like that there's so much value in stretching yourself into these unknown and unlikely situations. And, that's totally
Ugh.
made me the person that I am. And
And it's so uncomfortable, because you're a doctor, there's a lot of description of physical stuff, which I loved because that is shit I think about all the time. Like, wait, so if you're there, what happens if you get your period and you, I love that and you're so clinical about it. And it's a curiosity I have that you just filled in those blanks for me, which I love.
I'm so glad you love that because that's why I felt like if I can't do that as a doctor, talk about periods and pee bottles and diarrhea and everything else,
Right.
like who's going to,
Well,
do that.
I'm a Jew, so I'm scatological. So you go and do this and you're journaling, which, when you talk about specifics in a book, which, as a writer, the more specific, as a comic, the more specific it is, the more it's going to land or connect. And these conversations, I'm like, how the fuck does she remember that? And then you see, I wrote in my journal that night. And even I read a journal entry that you shared, and I'm like, who writes like this in their journal? Who the fuck writes like Ernest Hemingway in their journal?
Well, I forgot until I looked at my journals that I wanted to be a writer too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you're getting there.
Yeah.
Why not start with a book? Okay, so you travel around, and then, a series of you meet people, you're climbing, you go to a climb, you get asked to be a part of this expedition to climb Mount Everest. Now, you had already done some amazing climbs, but at this point, it was a small group that was going to climb the left side of Everest, which, if I remember, maybe had been done once before.
Yes, exactly. It's called the East Face. It's in Tibet because Everest is on the border of Nepal and Tibet. So when I went trekking, I was hiking on the Nepal side.
Right.
I met Everest climbers there towards the end of my trek. And then about a year later, they invited me to come on this future expedition to be the role of doctor.
Right. And you weren't through medical school, and you're like, no.
When I got the invitation, I had only done 1 year of medical school.
Well, considering Trump is now president, that would make you so you had 1 year of medical school, you could be Surgeon General.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why isn't he calling me? No.
Yeah.
So by the time we left for the expedition, I had completed 3 years of medical school.
You're a little trepidatious. You're like, can I do this? There's a lot of questioning.
A lot of self-doubt.
Yeah, a lot of self-doubt. But you end up doing it. I love that you got a Rolex.
Yeah.
You got funded. You got a grant, and then you got a Rolex, and they gave you a woman's Rolex. And you're like, no, I want the man's. I love that. Do you still have it?
We had this ceremony at the Explorers Club in New York, and they gave us all these watches because they were supporting our trip. And the men, I was the only one on the team. So there were 5 men with me, 4 climbers and the photographer. We were a very small team. Yeah, they got these big, beautiful adventure style watches, and they gave me a dainty thing.
No.
And I went back to medical school. But that night I was kind of like, I called them up the next day and asked them, can I have the men's model?
Yeah.
And they were so cool that they did that.
Do you still have it?
I do. I gave it to Jeff. He wears it every day. And it's inscribed in the back, Everest 1988.
Oh, my God. Okay. So you end up going, and the book, by the way, is full of, there's romance, there's bodily function, there's, there's adventure. It's got to be a movie. It's got to get made. Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Mimi Zieman. Get the book. The book is amazing. Tap dancing on Everest, and it's great. And we have to read because it's so fucking dreary out and freezing. I can't with the fucking cold. But this podcast, It's Judy's Show with Judy Gold, is produced by Laura Vogel, edited by Colin Schmaling, marketed by Haley Dircher, and my wonderful theme song is by the great and talented Lauren Gold, who is just a gift to mankind, and so talented. I am not going to, I'm performing in New York City during January. So I will post all those shows on February 2nd. I am at the Shames Jewish Community Center, which is in, whatchamacallit? It's in Westchester. Let me look it up. Shames JCC on the Hudson. It's in Tarrytown, so I'll be in Tarrytown on February 2nd. You can get all your tickets at judygold.com. And then I am going to be in an off-Broadway show, written by Joy Behar, called My First Ex-Husband. And I go into the show in February. They change the cast every month, and I'm excited. The first month is Susie Essman, Tova Feldshuh, and Adrienne C. Moore, and Joy Behar, which I want to give her a bell, but she's not Jewish, so she doesn't get a bell. But it's going to be great. I've seen the play done before. It's hilarious, and yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. I love you all. Stay warm. And as we always say, so long.